norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are white. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.
Okay, welcome back. This is episode 24, which is part 2 of Etiquette After Bringing Home a Baby for Friends and Family.
That's correct. Welcome back. As you may have heard from the last episode, we decided on the fly to make it 2 parts because it was long, not bad, actually very good, but long, longer than we expected. So it's going to be 2 episodes. Welcome back. This is part 2. It's going to feel weird going from this intro to the middle of our last recording. But if you've listened to the last episode, which we encourage you to do first, so you don't lose context and you understand the sections that we're going through, listen to the first one and then jump to this.
Yeah, the first episode covers 8 things that we requested of friends and family upon visiting and meeting our newborn twins. So go back and listen to that and then come back and start episode 24, part 2.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Mhm.
Cut.
Now that we've been through the 7 or I guess 8 S's now, I want to go through a couple categories of more specific instances and more real life scenarios of the postpartum time when people come and visit for babies, and I've divided it into time, help, and bring. I haven't thought of a cutesy way for you to remember it, but those are just to show you the categories that we have.
You're not always as creative as 7 or 8 S's or 4 to 8 S's.
You know what? I basically made this outline very fast, so
I was not trying to criticize you. I was making a joke that you're good at being creative about this, and I'm excited to see how you organize it.
Okay. So the first one is time, and this is for the people coming over, but also the people who's having the people come over. And a big issue, I think, for people coming over that's somewhat scary whenever you have a newborn is people overstaying their welcome. So, and it's not malicious, but it's hard. And so this is to kind of combat that for you. So I would say to the people coming, arrive on time and don't overstay your welcome. That's it for you. For the people having the people over, give a time slot. Say, okay, the baby is awake from 9 to 10:30. You can come anytime in that window. Or if you want it smaller, say you can come between 9 and 10, and that gives you a little bit of a buffer. And you can also say, not that you need a reason, but you can say at 10, I'm going to go to a feeding. And so that not gives you an out, but you're telling them I have a hard stop at 10, and that's when you basically need to be gone, if you will. And it's okay. This isn't what I would say, but it's okay if they come at 9:30. They're knowing their slot is only 30 minutes. And another reason I wanted to talk about this is that it's hard just in the moment when you have people over to stick to the boundary. And so if you start up front saying like, this is the time slot and this is what I'm doing afterwards, it will be easier for you to say, okay, I have to go feed now. And it won't, I don't know. I know that me, myself included, and other people I've talked to have trouble thinking that they're being rude or hurting the person's feelings. And at this time, especially at this time, you need to be thinking about what's best for you and your family. And if that means you need to get up, if you need to take a nap, so be it. Yeah?
Yeah. I think a tough thing here is when your guests don't have kids yet and don't understand the impacts of small changes to the kids' schedule. So especially if your relationship with that friend is super casual and like they're used to coming over whenever they're free or whatever. So I would say more so than they're overstaying their welcome, it's like you're trying to protect the routine of your child because it directly affects your mental and physical health, especially that early. It also affects their ability to develop, right? So like missing a nap time, for example, which is still happening for us in the toddler stage, that has a 3 to 5 day effect, negative effect. And I'm not saying we're blaming people who are coming over outside of their time window for that happening. But if you're overstaying your welcome and playing with the kid longer and, trying to like statements like, oh, they'll be fine. Like, it's not a big deal if they miss something. Well, that's not always true. And you don't know that. And it's not
And
your
you don't
kid.
get to decide that.
Yeah. So no, as the guest, especially the guest who hasn't experienced having kids and raising young kids yet, just know that those requests, while they might feel different than you're used to and uncomfortable, those requests of like, hey, I got a hard stop at 10. That's not against you. It's to support the kid. And and please respect it.
But also, it's not just about the kid, it's about you too. It's about the mom too. So if
Right.
you stay over to talk to them whenever the baby is sleeping, like maybe they've been awake, now the baby is sleeping, so they're not missing their nap time per se, but that mom may be missing her nap time. And, I think that some cases, myself included, would feel bad of like, okay, I'm gonna go take a nap now. But I do, I'm thinking about, remember when it was a Christmas party or something like that, and I think we said on the invitation ends at 11 or 10 or something, and there are still people over.
Are you talking about before kids?
Yeah, before
Yeah.
kids. And it wasn't like they were interacting with us per se, but they were interacting with each other at our house. And I was tired. So I just got up. And again, they weren't talking to me. I didn't do it mid conversation. But I think I had an early morning workout class or something the next day. And so I just went and started getting ready for bed and came out in my pajamas and my retainer and everything. And I don't know, I didn't say leave, but I'm going to sleep now, Um, that may be a little bit drastic, but I think it's okay to get up and say, I'm going to go prepare for a nap.
So I think what you're talking about is communicating when somebody has overstayed a boundary, whether they know they're welcome or whether they know it or not. With or without kids, I think communicating can be a little bit different than the way you chose to communicate in that situation. But I understand the point you're making. And like, this is another opportunity to communicate the why behind your windows. So it's not, hey, 9 to 10 is when I'm free. It's at 10, the baby has to go down. It's super important that they go down. If you get a shocked expression, a weird reply, whatever it is, like, does that, like, you can say like, oh, did I state that well? Does that make sense? Like, here's the why. If they don't do this, it seems super controlling and super structured. If they don't do this, like, we might not be able to sleep through the night. I might not be able to do these 3 feedings. Like, I may not be able to make this work. Meaning, it's not that you're required to justify it, but in the same senses of the 7 or 8 S's, helping them understand the why hopefully breaks down the barrier of this feels weird.
Yeah, and I think it's a gray area of, you don't have to explain yourself, but if you're
Yeah.
worried, and I think people who are worried about things like that often do feel the need to explain themselves, but I think it's okay. Like, no is a complete sentence, right? So saying that you have to do something is a
Yeah.
complete sentence, and you're not required to, but it could make them understand and make you feel better if you explain the why, like you said. So I think it's
Right.
it's a gray
It's
area,
more of a
but
recommendation
Mhm.
than yeah, I agree with you. It's,
Yeah.
you don't have to, you don't have a duty to. I would say if it's a friend or a family member that's not understanding, it would help you to
Mhm.
help them understand.
I always love to know the why because it helps me understand, and regardless of the scenario, if it's, even if it's like a work thing, I like to know why is it done this way.
Yeah.
So I always enjoy a good why.
Another thing with that is like, your goal in communicating your why is simply communicating it. It's not for them to understand.
Right.
And it's also not for them to agree with
Yeah.
it. So like,
Yeah.
if you've stated it in a weird way, if you've stated it clearly and they don't get it or they don't agree, that's fine. It doesn't mean, like, if you as the guest do not understand or agree with the boundary that the parents are setting up, that's not a reason to break it.
Mhm.
Break it with your own kid.
Yeah.
The encouragement I would give, this is a slightly different subject, to the parents when they're providing the time windows. If the time window that seems to work for your friend doesn't work for you, A, it's okay to say, oh, that doesn't work for us. B, I would encourage you, this is going to be uncomfortable, to think of, hey, this might not work, but I do want this person to come over or be able to support us. Let me provide an alternative. Do that. It's not weird to say like, dang, like, so example, my friend, we'll call him Bob. If Bob says like, hey, Nick, I'm free for lunch. Can I come over and help you guys? Can I come see the baby? That hour doesn't work for us. I can either say, oh man, that's a tough time. Like, sorry, that window doesn't work for us. Or I can say, hey, that doesn't work. But between these hours, 3 and 5 later tonight, or maybe like 5 to 5:30, it'd be awesome if you could come over.
Yeah.
Or even say like, if they're offering help, you can say like, I'm so sorry, this does, or you don't have to say I'm sorry. You can just say like, this time doesn't work for us. I so appreciate your request, but this time would. And whether they can say yes or no to it doesn't matter. But the point is, you don't want to block yourself from receiving the help or getting the time from that friend or family member with your baby and with you just because that time slot doesn't work. Don't compromise your time slot, but make sure internally that you're providing alternatives if you actually want that person to come over, to enable their ability to come. Like with really close family members, you can share like an actual schedule, which you've talked about before, of like free times, but that's not plausible with every friend. The point is, don't just like, no is a complete sentence, but if you want them to come over, you don't have to stop it. Man, that doesn't work. Like, provide options.
Yeah, we're going to talk about schedules in the next section, but I also wouldn't say I so appreciate the request. That sounds very businessy.
Well,
I would say I really want you to meet them. Here's another time.
Yeah. And I think what
Just
I
to
was
be
thinking,
clear.
yeah, you're right. There's a difference a little bit in like somebody trying to come to see the kid. And I was more thinking of like somebody saying, hey, can I come help?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the request I appreciate. I
I
appreciate somebody
really
trying to see.
appreciate it.
I appreciate somebody trying to see my kid as well, but I see your point. I was more thinking like if somebody's like, hey, can I come clean your kitchen? Or hey, can I come mow the lawn? Or hey, can I come do like that kind of help can also be invasive if it's the wrong time slot. So I'm saying don't say no to the help, say no to the time slot and provide alternatives to encourage them to continue to come back.
Yeah. So our next section is help, which that kind of, I guess, seamlessly goes into that section.
That's why I wanted to say that point last, because it
Okay.
bridges both of the things.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to have this section was because you're coming over to meet the baby, yes, but you're also coming over to support the mother family who is experiencing this very new time, whether it be a new edition or second edition. It's all a new scenario for everybody involved. And so when
hopefully you're coming over to help them. I'm agreeing with you. And
right.
as the guest, you should have that posture. I'm just drawing the distinction.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have it written down to say, but basically, if you're not prepared to help, you're not in the mental state to help, you can't follow instructions or directions, I would postpone your visit, specifically in the fourth trimester, the first 3 months of the baby's life, just because that's a very chaotic time. And I know the family wants you to meet their child, but it's also a really, really important time, the support for the mother and the family as a whole. And so I would come over and offer to help, not just to hold a cute, sleeping, happy baby. Where parents need the help is when it's hard. You know, witching hour, which you mentioned, the 3 to 5 time, or 5 to 5:30. That is a very hard time for kids. Does the parent need a time to shower? Do they need a time for you to hold the baby so they can eat? You know, I know it can be hard coming in and like having to teach someone how to do something if they're trying to help, whether it be cleaning the bottle parts or the breast pumps correctly, or even feeding the baby. We had a specific way, like we didn't want the bottle upright. We wanted it held at an angle so that it didn't, free fall flow or like choke them. So there's a learning curve, and it can be really hard to delegate tasks that you're not sure that the person knows how to do or knows how to do to your liking or standard. And so a way you can get around that is have them come over and shadow you so that you're teaching them as you're doing it, not, teaching them while your baby sleeps, because you could be sleeping or doing something else, and have them shadow you and then come back and do it another day where they know how to do it, or maybe they need to shadow you again. But that's a great way to use the time that you have someone to talk to so that you're not just alone. Have adult interaction and also be helpful in that way. There's a lot of things you can do that are not, changing a poopy diaper or holding a screaming baby. Like I said, shower, food, eating. You want to be there for the harder things, because that's, I think, what the parent really needs.
So let me tease out a few things you said there, because I agree with you. So to me, there's like 3 states in which you show up to hang with the kids and the mother and the father, right? The first is, I just want to see them. I'm coming over as a guest, right? I would say that's like probably a pretty normal posture without the kids. It's like, I'm just coming over to hang. The second one is, I'm coming over not only to see them and spend time with them, but with the expectation of myself that I'm going to help because they're going through it, right? The third, and harder to recognize, that you've already mentioned, is there's stuff going on in my life that could, obviously unintentionally,
as the guest,
get in the way of or amplify the negative experiences or tough experiences that the parents are going through right now. right? That one's a hard one to swallow. It's a hard one to communicate as the host if you see it and the guest doesn't recognize it. And it's kind of a hard one, honestly, to talk about here. But like, let me go through those, right? So the first one, I see no harm in you coming over and wanting to see us. I love that you want to see us as new parents. I love that you want to see the baby. I would prefer that you come over with a helping hand in addition to wanting to spend the time. Not because we deserve it, not because you need to be nicer, but because it would be good to have a recognition that parents that early on, whether they have other kids or not, there's a ton of stuff going on, especially if they're new parents. It's hard without anybody coming over. So the littlest little thing that you can do would provide a massive benefit. So come over with the expectation of yourself that I can help, right? At the very least, don't get in the way, but be there and be supportive and be helpful. Sometimes that help is just talking to them, and that's okay, right? That might be what they need. Sometimes it's, I'm going to clean the kitchen while they're upstairs breastfeeding the baby. That's great too. But show up wanting to help. That's my recommendation. Is that fair?
Mhm.
I'm not saying you're a bad person if you don't, but be aware of it and be aware that what you're stepping into is a situation that out of the ordinary needs more of you in a helpful capacity. If you're in the helpful mode already, great. Be graceful with the help that you offer and be attentive to the help that they're allowing you to do and asking you to do. So just because you feel like, to your point earlier, hey, I can clean all this stuff. Like I can clean the bottles, I can clean the kitchen or whatever. There's a lot of little tiny organizational things. There's a lot of bottle pieces, ways in which people like to specifically clean their bottles. Like that may be either an opportunity for them to train you if you're going to come over more frequently and help, or they may come to you and be like, hey, there's a lot of super specific stuff here. Can you actually do this? Like, thank you so much. Can you do this? It's okay if they redirect you. That's them loving and accepting your offer of help and redirecting you to something that is going to help them in the moment. Whether you agree or not doesn't matter. Keep your servant heart and go keep serving, right? And then the challenge there to the host, which we've already kind of said, is be comfortable with redirecting that help. If somebody is offering you help, it's not happening the way that you want it to. It's not happening in a way that you're comfortable with. You're getting frustrated because you might have to redo it. Gracefully communicate that and ask them to do something else. The point here is that they are willing. They're showing up as category number 2. They're willing to help you. Accept the help. If you need to redirect it, it's okay. Don't say no to it. Redirect it and accept it. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So there's the I'm showing up and I'm showing up willing to help. Those are the 2 I've gone through.
The thing that I want to add to the showing up part is make sure you're showing up and you're not just showing up for their baby, you're showing up for the parent. You're saying it as it looped into whole, but I don't think that's the case for everybody coming. Do not forget the parent. That's all I was going to say on that part.
While I agree with you, please provide specifics. Give me an example of what you're talking about.
Don't just pay attention to the baby. Don't just hold the baby, don't on the baby. The mother
Okay.
needs to be spoken to.
I get it.
The mother should be asked how they're doing. They need attention to and they matter. It's not just about the baby.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. The other way I heard that, which I think still applies, is just holding the baby or spending time with the baby or changing diapers or feeding. All the things around the baby, while they may be helpful, may not be what the couple actually needs in that moment. They might need you to clean the kitchen. They might need you to sweep the floor. They might need you to repark the car, whatever it is.
Yeah, it makes me think of we had friends who gave us little coupons, and I think we just now in the last couple months used their Watch the Kids card because we were like, wait, but we miss you. We want to hang out with you. So they may need the adult interaction and to feel a part, even though their life won't be the same as it was pre-kids. It's different now. They want to feel something in such a chaotic time. They want to feel something that is more like what their quote old life was, to kind of bring them into equilibrium, if you will. It's not that the new life is bad, but they want to kind of feel that, and they miss some parts of their old life, such as hanging out with their friends whenever they want to.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I was thinking of it in the way of service and attentive care to the parents, just like you were. I was trying to tease out both, but I'm with you.
No. And I think that it goes with what you were saying along the lines of it's whatever they need the help with right now. And it could be they just need camaraderie right now.
Yeah.
The other thing that made me think of the same friends, they, along with other friends, gave me a pedicure that I didn't use until over a year later. like postpartum. Like they gave it to me to go get it myself, and I just wasn't in the headspace to even go do that. So if we'll talk about gifts in a second, but that is a good gift, but also maybe, not that they didn't not do this. It was my own problem, but you could say like, hey, you go get a pedicure while I watch the baby or something like that. So again, it's whatever help they need, and you are not fit to judge the help they do or do not need in that moment, I think. As we mentioned today, we're a big fan of Lunya pajamas, and I say we because Nick actually does have a pair of the Lago, which is their men's brand silk pajamas.
Yes, I do.
And
Very
they're
nice.
great. He's actually worn this shirt for the site out. Just like last night, I was out and I wore my silk green top in the new Glade green color, and it is beautiful. But my whole point in saying this is that silk pajamas are a great gift for a new parent if you're wanting to spend a little bit more and give them a little bit of luxury in the time that is not luxurious. It'll probably have milk stains on it, but the best part about Lunya is that it is machine washable, so you're able to just throw it in the garment bag and clean it really easily and not have to worry about hand washing, which, well, about time saving over here. So give it a try, give it as a gift, and use code BGMAD for 15% off.
BGMAD. Go buy them. So the third category is the guest may not be in a state to come over, and not that it's all about help, but like at the very least, they may not be able to come over and not add unintentionally to the stress and difficulty of the environment that's already there. An easy visible example of this is if somebody is super physically sick, right? So like, and it's easier to recognize. I think I might have said that twice, but if you're the guest and you're super sick, whether you've communicated it or not, going over there will add an extra burden to the family, will possibly endanger the child, will maybe mess with the schedule and ultimately impact the parents and the kids. That one's obvious. You wouldn't want to do that, right?
You could even say, like, if the person had a back pain or something like that was really bad, maybe not that they had surgery, but that's something like, okay, you want to help, you want to physically be there, but because you can't lift the baby, you can't do this, someone probably has to help you up the stairs. There's a little bit more of a burden than that the parents, quite frankly, don't need to be dealing with in addition to already having a baby or babies to take care of.
A very clear point I want to make here is we are not saying that you as the guest and what you're going through, what you may be suffering through doesn't matter. Nor are we saying that the parents should ignore you if you're going through something you need support from them on. But when we're thinking through the context of just visits to support the family and to support and spend time with the new baby, you don't want to add extra stress to that. In the same way that if you're going through something or you're sick and you need to be taken care of, you want the person showing up for you that's going to be taking care of you to be physically and mentally able to do so.
Yeah.
So don't consider yourself a burden. Again, not the point. The point is, ask yourself before you're going over, can I be there, be present, and at least be neutral? And at best, be a help.
Yeah.
If the answer is no, delay your visit. You don't even have to say why. Like, just take care of yourself and also be able to take care of the people you're going over to serve in the same way that you would expect to be taken care of for somebody who's coming to serve you.
Yeah.
So the easier way to go back to the sick example to see this is outward physical illness, an ailment. You're not physically able to help. You have an injury, just like you said, right? Another tougher way to see, and probably tougher way to recognize as the guest, is like, I just went through a breakup, or I just got laid off, or
severe depression.
Sure. Like, and we don't have to list everything, but like those are harder to see. In no way are they better or worse. I'm not trying to compare anything here. I'm just saying those are opportunities, those are examples of things that may be keeping you as the guest from being able to serve in an area where you should be there to serve. Right? I think that makes sense. So like, I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying go when you're able to help. And I'm also not saying don't ask those people, the parents, for help with you if you need it. That's not what I'm saying. That's a completely separate thing. It's good to keep in mind and recognize that they're going through it. and they're going through something else, right? And they may not be as present to be able to help you in the same way you may not be as present to be able to go over and help them. But the point is not to isolate. The point is not to keep people away. This is probably just a good practice you should have. It's just a high pressure situation with a new baby. Like, if you are going to step in to help, be able to help.
Yeah. And just something, it doesn't really back up your point per se, but something that I wanted to say for this section, if that's okay, would be, well, it kind of ties in that if you're experiencing sickness or something like that, mentally, physically, emotionally, you may not be at your best self to be able to hear directions and hear wishes from the family and follow the directions, which is also really hard to deal with, especially when you are trying to help and then it just ends up being not helpful. But a way that you can, as the parent, kind of help with this, not necessarily people being able to listen, but when you're getting help, is just keep a iPhone note that you can share and update the baby schedule so that you don't have to repeat to everybody, okay, this is when the baby sleeps, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is the current schedule. So, and these are the windows within that so that they can see. They may not know everything that goes on with like having to take care of a baby, and it's not a vacation and maternity leave, but I think the visibility in that is good and helpful to understand how people can help. But then it's also like your pediatrician probably wants to know what the schedule is. So just do it once and continually update it, and you basically, I think it's a really helpful tool to have throughout this whole time.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, you can share those in a view-only state. So the people you're comfortable seeing it, don't mess with it. Your schedule's still controlled by you. You still get to make updates to it. But they all, to your earlier point, they all see it. And to connect that, I don't know if we've fully moved on yet, but to connect that with the service piece and is it help that we called that category? If you know you're free during a time window and you're offering that time window and the parents are cool with you coming over, maybe know like, oh, this is when they're usually doing this, or this is when they're usually cleaning these things or whatever. Like, maybe you can tailor your help offer. This is a nice to have, but maybe you can tailor your help offer to your knowledge that they've given you of their schedule. And,
I love that.
Still be ready for them to say like, oh, I love that you're seeing that, but this actually would be more helpful. Still be agile and be ready to pivot on their recommendation. But like, it would be really cool as the parent for somebody to come in and be like, hey, I know you usually do like dishes around there. Let me do that. You go do this. That'd be cool.
I love that. And also I wanted to say, don't come by unannounced. Depending on your relationship with the person, I say a general rule of thumb is don't just show up unannounced. But like Nick said, if you can see like, oh, the feeding or the pumping is here, they probably need their pump parts cleaned. I can offer to come over with something specific of like, hey, can I come over? I'm going to clean the bottles and the pump parts for you. It lifts the burden and the mental load of trying to see what someone can help you with. And it's a very real thing of like, okay, that is helpful and I wouldn't have to do it without, having to think about it. And more than likely they'll say like, sure. And also don't be afraid to follow up or ask again another time. I think we had so many people say like, oh, I want to help here. I want to help here. And we turned it away essentially. And I think maybe ask a couple more times and see like, hey, I'm just checking in. Can I come help you do this? And don't be afraid to ask again, I think is my point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which we talked about.
I would say don't be afraid to remind them that you're there and you're willing to help.
Yeah. And we talked about that in episode 17 of my regrets in pregnancy and postpartum, is that we wish we would have taken more help early on, especially being in a place where we don't have a lot of immediate family nearby. We could have taken people up on the help that they asked or to do.
And I have a slightly different opinion on don't drop by. I think there's some clarifications there. So like, I would say if you normally just drop by and you're not part of regular help or service to the family, like you're not a nanny or you're not somebody who lives there, or you're not like a mother or a mother-in-law who's consistently coming over every day to make breakfast or whatever. Like if you're not in that category and you're used to dropping by, instead of just dropping by, communicate. Be like, hey, I'm in the area. If you like, do you want me to come help, or can I come do this or whatever? If they don't answer you, to your earlier point, it's not a good time to stop by. If they answer you and it is a good opportunity, great, you're able to stop by. It's not don't go, or like don't try and, mention, hey, I'm here and I'm able to help. Don't stay away. But to your earlier point, if you normally would just walk through the door and not really think about it, you need to start thinking about it now that there's a schedule and kids in place.
I agree with everything you just said, but I think that the things you listed at the beginning were not people dropping by. They are people part of a schedule. And I think that
That's what I was
they're
drawing the distinction between.
okay.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So just don't come by unannounced. Yeah. That's what.
I'm saying don't enter unannounced. If you like, I'm saying you don't have to like fully plan and think ahead of when you're going to come over. Like if I'm next door to your house by chance and I've walked to Ralph's, like, and it's not a scheduled time, it's still okay for me as the guest to text
Yeah,
and be
but
like,
you're
hey, I'm in the
texting.
area.
You're not just knocking on the door.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Don't
Okay.
walk through the door, but still communicate. I think it can be interpreted as like unscheduled drop-ins are never okay. That's not what I'm saying. I'm clarifying, like, if you're in the area and let them know that you're in the area, that's great. If they don't answer, stay away, but don't just bust through the door.
Sure. By definition, to me, the things about being in the area and texting is not just dropping by. So I just don't define that. So we don't need. I think it's a little bit of splitting hairs, but the sheer act of texting to see if you can come over is not just dropping by, in my book. And I think a lot of people would consider that as well.
I think that you, in a different scenario, would consider the text to be dropping by in an unscheduled weird appearance. That's what I'm teasing out here. It sounds like we're recommending the same thing, though. Like we're both comfortable with the text.
Yeah. I would just text.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you're dropping by, this brings us to our next and last section, bring. Arrive with something. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's within your budget, but especially on the first visit, I would arrive with something for the mom, whether it be flowers or coffee. You could ask if they have a coffee order that they want, or pick up Chick-fil-A or something on the way, or maybe they say no, their order, you bring it anyway. Or honestly, if you want to get a different gift, like I said, a pedicure is nice. A massage, once they're cleared for massage, would be nice. One of my favorite things I didn't think about is a little bit on the pricier side. So if you're wanting to spend a little bit more, Lunia pajamas. I lived in those. Those are my favorites to throw on postpartum because they're kind of chic, but they're also very comfortable. I wear the Pima cotton ones, but the silk is also great, and it just feels very luxurious. And I like that you don't necessarily feel luxurious postpartum in that time. And so we have a code. You can use BGMAD for 15% off your order, your Lunia order, and that's just a good idea if you're looking to spend a little bit more and treat the mom. The other thing I would bring is a gift for the other sibling, if there is one, or other siblings. And that's something actually my mom taught me this very early on. Why I remember that, I don't know. I guess we visited a lot of moms and babies over my lifetime, but she would always bring something like flowers for the mom and then a gift for the other sibling, because it is a transition, not only for the mom, but for any other sibling at home. Like they've never had this other sibling there. And honestly, I often will dote on the other child. Like when meeting for the first time, I will go to the older sibling or older siblings, be like, oh, you want to show me your new brother or your new sister, and check on them because they are used to getting the attention, and now this other thing has kind of taken it away. And even if they're adjusting well to it, it can be hard. So I would bring something like a stuffed animal or a book, or there's really cute big brother or big sister books to get, just for the other child so that they feel special.
It may be cool if you're using the note strategy here and sharing your schedule or sharing something with a close group of friends. You can use that note and throw at the end of it, Nick likes this coffee, Lauren likes this coffee, or Nick's a Chinese food guy, Lauren's a Mexican food girl, whatever. Throw a few preferences there.
I love that.
Yeah. So that way, if you have access to that note as a guest, don't ask,
Just
get what's on there. Right.
Yeah.
And I would also say, I like the point about bringing stuff. If your hosts aren't responding to you, you don't know what to bring, just try. Even if you bring something that they're not going to like, or that is not going to serve them well, or they just don't want to drink coffee at that hour of the day or something, the gesture is still a beautiful thing, and that's not a waste of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, again, if that's not in your budget to bring gifts, write a card. Draw a picture for the
Yeah.
kid and write a card to the mom and
Yeah.
express you're here for them. That counts. You don't have to spend a
Yeah.
lot of money. You don't have to buy silk pajamas for someone to know that they feel they are there, that you're there for them and they feel loved. On the food topic, you mentioned another thing you can do is create a meal train for somebody. We didn't have a meal train. I froze a lot of stuff ahead of time, and then we had some friends who offered to send us meals here and there. But you can do a meal train for somebody. It's a whole system that people can sign up, whether people drop off food for you or, just send you like a DoorDash or a Grubhub or some type of gift card with that. It just allow, or there are like, somebody sent me a big Jones on Third order, which is like I don't want to call it a cafe, but they have food you can go in and get sandwiches, but also a good like frozen section. So if there's something like that, or they have frozen things at Whole Foods or whatnot that are more like home cooked meals versus just like from a cardboard box. And those are all great ideas too. And I know that some people are hesitant to do meal trains because they don't want to have to host somebody every day. So typically you sign up like consecutive days, like, okay, here's when they're coming home from the hospital. And then they do it for the first month or so. It's a lot to have to try to host another person every single night. And so, in my opinion,
Or another family.
correct. Meal trains are not so you can see the baby. Meal trains are for support of the parents, and you just leave that on the doorstep. And if they want to invite you in, they can, but they are not required to drop in. They are not required to let you drop in, and that can be, scheduled another time if there's a sip and see, or just another time on the schedule. And I think as the person dropping off the food, you should keep that in mind. That it's literally just a support for the family. And also, don't be afraid as the person who the meal train is for to be specific about what you want. Like, I've done some where they're like, okay, we don't do beans or we don't do cheese. Like there are specific things that like they need, and please cater to what the person needs. That's also why, DoorDash is easy because you can get their exact order. Or I had people who don't respond to me. I'm like, fine, I know you don't want me to do it, or you're avoiding it, or maybe you just don't have the capacity to respond to me. I'm going to send you a DoorDash gift card. It's covered. You feel loved. I got you.
Yeah, that's good. So two main things in there. If you're on a meal train, don't expect that you go inside.
Right.
You be ready. If you're free, great. If like text them, hey, your meal's on the doorstep. If they see it and they're cool with you coming in, they'll let you know and then do it. It's not that you can't. It's the expectation is you won't be going in.
Yeah.
If you're setting up a meal train for yourself, or you have had one set up for you and you're the host, it is not your responsibility to host those people that are bringing over meals for you. I think those expectations need to be understood on both sides. So I could see, like, not to call you out, but you are one that would feel guilty in that. You would expect to be the host, and you would psych yourself out and put a lot of pressure on yourself to create the right environment and feel like you had to invite them in, right? I'm not saying those are ridiculous thoughts. You're just on that side of that spectrum. You don't have to. The mother or the father that has the train to serve them, you do not have to host. And whether your guest understands that or not, it doesn't matter. Hold your boundaries. Say, thank you so much. Like, tough time. We'll have you over another time.
Yeah.
Take the meal. The point is the meal.
Yeah. And again, if you are invited in, don't overstay. Don't overstay.
Yeah.
And
if you don't know, we didn't say this earlier. If you don't know what overstaying is, like, define it. Right? Ask. Like be like, hey, I've got time. I want to hang out with you guys, but like, when's a good time for me to jet out? Like, take the pressure off the host there and provide that opportunity for structure if you don't know.
Or if they've given you the time slot of like, hey, you have for between 9 and 10:30. If you're still there at 10:30, be like, hey, I have the time. Like, if you need to take a nap, go for it. I have the time to give. Would you want me to do a load of laundry for you, or something like that? Offer it in that manner.
And also, be completely cool if the answer is no. You gracefully offering it or resetting, like, hey, it feels like we're still talking. Do you still need me to go at 10:30? Like, just keep it top of mind and be willing to flex as the family needs you to flex.
Yeah, I also wanted to say, I don't know, I probably should have defined it. If I said sip and see, if you're not sure what that is, it's basically a party where that people have to meet the children, to where a bunch of people can meet at once. It's obviously sounds overwhelming, but it can be less overwhelming than having, 30 people over to your house for the sip and see itself. Also, I wanted to say, if you're texting someone to see if you can come over, or maybe you're just texting to see how someone is doing, sometimes people don't answer. Like I've said, texting after kids has been more like it turned into email and I'll get to it 3 to 5 business days. Sometimes, like even yesterday, I had 15 texts and I was like, I know I need to go through these, but it just feels really overwhelming. Like I've been on all day and I know texting seems passive, but it is actually more active, especially when trying to figure out what to say or a response. And so be prepared for people not to respond right away. Also, if someone is experiencing, severe or even just not as severe postpartum depression and or anxiety, that's real. They may not respond to you because they are in a deep depression, but they more than likely will have seen your text messages and appreciate them. So keep trying and keep reaching out, especially if you're checking on them and see how they're doing. I think asking how the mom is doing is so, so, so important, just to feel like that someone is checking on them and not just the babies. And then if you're experiencing that, say it out loud. Say like, I am healing from postpartum depression, or I'm healing from postpartum anxiety. Tell your spouse, tell a friend, get it out loud so you're not keeping it inside. And also, you need to talk to your doctor about it. If you can't seem to do it, maybe your spouse or a friend could act on your behalf. If it's just too overwhelming to tell your doctor and they need to know about it to where they can ask you the questions versus you having to say all that, that's an option too. But I just wanted to mention that because it's baby blues are real.
I want to change one word that you said. You said keep trying when you said text messages. To me, especially in that situation, your intent in sending those messages is to send the message. It's a completed, finished action when you send the I'm thinking about you. I hope you're doing okay. Please let me know if you need anything. Don't expect a response. You already said this, but like if you think through the lens of try, you're trying something until you get something. What I'm trying to say is that the entire purpose of you sending the message is for the message to get there. That's it. It's a cherry on top if they give a response to you, and that's beautiful. But just in your mind, check off the I've sent this. Like I'm extending the grace and the positivity and the words of affirmation and whatever you're sending.
I don't know that I would check it off. I think that's why I said it, because it can be.
Oh, sure.
If you're asking a question and not getting a response, I'm not saying they owe you a response, but it may be not a cry for help, but somewhat of a flag of like, everything's not okay here. And so by keep trying, I mean, don't give up on the person.
Yeah.
And just,
I hear you
they
there.
may never respond to it, or maybe, several months later, and they could say like, yeah, I saw your texts. I'm so sorry I didn't respond. I just wasn't in a place to it, but I really appreciated them. The point, to your point, is not to get something in return, is to make sure they're okay.
And that's a good point. You said that don't ignore the signs of them not responding. That's not what I'm suggesting, but you're right. It's like what you're trying to do is be positive and extend love. Keep doing that.
Yeah.
Can I do one more sentence on texting? Just a quick one. Talking to guys here for the texting thing, even if it's weird, send some messages to your buddy who's become a dad. Because he's just as I don't want to say just as busy, but he's super busy, just like the mom is, right? He's going through it. And he's also, I know this, not able to extend invites to you he normally would and attend things with you that he normally would be able to. I think there's a tendency with the friends to unintentionally and accidentally pull away a bit and realize like, oh, it's been 3 or 4 weeks and I've asked him to go out and have a drink with me and he just can't do it. And I'm just not going to ask anymore. Ask, or replace your asks with like, hey man, thinking about you guys, whatever. Like, you sending the text messages is just as important as sending them to the mother. And just don't ignore that is all I'm saying. I'm not saying the guy matters more in any way. I'm just saying like, don't ignore that they're going through a difficult thing, even if it's beautiful, and that your presence, even in just sending those messages, is impactful and positive.
On that note, I want to add, I know sometimes, like as a mom, I don't get, not to make it about me, there are invitations that I don't know that I don't get, or that maybe I used to get and I don't anymore. And I think the people are trying to be courteous and, know that I have other responsibilities now, but it's still like somewhat hurtful to never get those asks or like hangouts just because I do have other responsibilities. It could be as simple as like, hey, I think you have the twins here, but I would love to see you, or maybe they can come, or let's plan a hangout where they can come too. Don't stop asking parents to hang out if you yourself do not have kids, and also don't be frustrated. Or you're allowed to be frustrated, but don't be mad at them if they have to say no because of the kids. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there. I would just say like ask and include, and I think that will go a long way.
Yeah. And since we're on the subject, I know I brought it up, but since we're on the subject, moms and dads who have to say no to a lot more things than you're used to saying no to, do not feel bad about that. And also try and release yourself from the pressure of like, man, I'm not really participating. Like, this sucks. This is in the way of my life. No, it isn't. It's just a new thing. You'll figure
Mhm.
out how to weave it into your life and you'll be
Yeah.
able to go. Just
Yeah.
not today.
Yeah. So I mean that also lives in like the boundaries. So like episodes I wanted to share that might be helpful for you is our episode 6, which is our boundary episode. It's called it's not don't take it personally, it's just a boundary. And we obviously talk about it in regards to kids, but I think it's good for adults to hear too. And when you're going into this postpartum time, moms, have somebody be there who can enforce your boundary for you. So it could be your spouse, it was Nick for me, but it sometimes doesn't have to be your spouse. It could be somebody who just has your best interest at heart, because obviously Nick was going through a lot of the same things I was going to through as far as like feedings and late nights, and all of that stuff. And so, he maybe, and sometimes not that anything happened, I'm just generically speaking, um, could be under the influence of the same lack of sleep and things that I'm experiencing, and may not respond well to certain things. So you may make it your sister is like your person to have your best interest at heart, and to basically not stand guard and gatekeep, but just help you have sound logic, and it just have someone be your champion, I'd say, during this time.
Yeah.
Two other episodes I think will be really helpful to go back and listen to is episode 8, What I Wish I Would Have Known Postpartum, and episode 17, My Regrets in Pregnancy and Postpartum. I think those would be a lot of food for thought, and may make you feel seen, may help you in the future.
Yeah. Those are great.
Yeah. Okay. So we good? I was going to move on to Ask BGMAD.
Let's do it.
All right. So Ask BGMAD is a segment where a listener writes in with a question or a topic they want us to help with. And so this was a question.
That was the request going.
Oh, I like it. You can DM us at boygirlmom.com or send us an email at hello@boygirlmom.com. I'm due soon with my child, and my mom keeps making comments about being there when they're born, even though I've tried to make it clear that it'll just be me and my husband. What should I do? I've already told her, but I feel like if I say it again, it'll be devastating for her.
This is a weird place to start. Roll with me. My first challenge is to the asker of this question. Have you actually clearly communicated your expectations? I'm not saying you haven't. It's entirely possible that you have. You and I have experienced this where you think you very clearly communicated something and it wasn't definitive to me. Doesn't mean you were right or wrong. Doesn't mean you communicated it wrong. It just means that, like, think of an actual outlet and a plug. We just didn't meet, right? Make sure that you have at least attempted to clearly communicate, hey, I've heard you reference this a lot. We're super excited for you to meet the babies. Right after we've decided it's going to be us and nobody else. Be clear. You can give reasons or not. It's up to you. Be very clear. If you, in this question, if you're thinking like, oh, I've mentioned, oh yeah, me and John are really excited to be here when the babies are born. That in your head might be you clearly communicating it. That's not clearly communicating it. That's you thinking that somebody should understand and recognize what's already clear in your head. I think a lot of this probably is communication. Assuming you have clearly communicated, which again is entirely possible, or maybe you're past that and your mom or mother-in-law, whoever this is, I think they said mom, right, is still making it clear that they're either ignoring you or still going to be there. Then I think you have to go down the enforcement path that we've outlined for expectations related things in the past of like, hey, I keep hearing you say this. I feel like we've talked about it, but just to restate, like, this is what it's going to be. We're going to be there. We're not having anybody else, including you. We love that you want to be there. we're going to hope that you're here for this thing, or we are excited for you to be able to be there later for this thing. And up to you whether you go into details or not.
Kind of like a no and.
Yeah.
So you're not saying no to everything. You're just saying no to this thing. And this
Yes.
is when so the opposite of improv. It's not a yes and, it's a no and.
Yes. And don't forget, no is a full sentence. Like this is you and your journey. It's completely okay to cut those things out and say, like, I don't mean cut your parents out, but just say, like, this is my decision. You know, you don't even have to say, I'm sorry. Just like, hey, this is how it's going to be, you know?
Yeah.
I would say don't be brash if you don't need to be, and be graceful. But just my point is, don't feel like you have to provide the why, and don't feel like you have to convince them and have them understand, right? They're not going to understand. Thinking forward, I would love to be in the hospital when our grandchildren are born. That may not be the preference of our kids, right? And that's going to suck for me if it happens. We don't have to dive into this, but my point is, like, I can understand objectively how on the other side of this, it can be frustrating to hear this. You can't manage the reactions of the people you're setting your boundary for. You can manage your grace and clear communication. Do that.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. I think the way that I would, I'm sorry that it's stressful, and especially stressful on something you're already can be a stressful situation. So I apologize on behalf of that whole thing.
Yes, I skipped that part, didn't I? I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's a constant theme. It's okay. In these, it's just funny because you're like, oh yeah. But I liked everything you had
You're
to
right.
say. And even if you type it out, like, let's say, like, for me, there's a lot of instances, whether it be, I don't want to give too many examples. I've been clear in my wishes, whether it be the eight S's or whatever, and then there's still a miscommunication. To me, that is very clear. Perhaps you need to enforce it. That's what we said, like, say it again in a kind manner. But for this kind of heart-to-heart moment, I would absolutely not text them. I would do it in person, or I would do it over the phone. So there is no interpretation of text. That's where I've gotten into trouble, and where trouble has risen is whenever I'm re-communicating a boundary that I've already clearly communicated, meaning in the sense that, like, it has been written out in a sentence. Texting that has not gone over well for anybody, or whether it be email or written format. I would
agree.
say absolutely have it in person, even though it's hard. Over the phone, even though it's hard. It will be better than texting it. I promise. If you're having to have this, hey, conversation.
Yeah, and in the same way that we talked about delivering the text messages, your goal in those conversations, I agree that your baseline should be a voice and phone conversation.
Or voice message, that works too. I would still do a phone call or in person, but voice message is a good alternative as well.
My preference is phone call because voice message is one way. I think the back and forth is important, but I understand what you're saying. In voice,
I have voice message conversations with people all the time where we go back and forth.
Yes,
but I think,
and they talk for 3.5 minutes, and then you send back a 3.5 minute message, and it's beautiful. But I don't think for a difficult conversation it provides the right.
I think it's a best worst case scenario, best case scenario.
I agree with that. So your goal is to clearly and gracefully communicate your expectations. Your goal is not, I feel like I've restated this a lot, but it's important. Your goal is not to get them to be nice, to get them to agree, to get them to understand, to help you enforce your boundary. Your goal is to communicate it.
Okay.
That's it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I'm not saying be brash or too direct or mean. I'm saying you have not failed if it's a difficult conversation and the person on the other end doesn't understand. Mm-hmm. You have succeeded if you are gracefully, kindly, and directly communicating your expectations. That's success.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We loved recording this for you, especially since it was a request from a listener. So if you have any requests, please let us know. We hope you found value in this 2-part series of etiquette after bringing home a baby for friends and family. We hope that you not only rate us, but also if you enjoyed these episodes, send them to a friend or family member who could use the boundary support, or, to share with your family who are going to be coming over soon to meet your newborn. Either way, we hope you love it and we hope you share it, and we thank you for listening and growing with us.
Thanks for sticking around. And as a reminder, if you haven't listened to the first part and you've somehow listened to the second part first, that's okay. I would encourage you to go back and watch the first one. There's great nuggets in both around this subject. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And thanks for growing with us.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.